The fluorescent lights in Providence General's emergency wing cast harsh shadows across the linoleum floor as Staff Sergeant Derek Hollis slammed his palm against the nurse's station counter. "I said move, sweetheart. This area is reserved for real heroes." The woman behind the desk didn't flinch. Sarah Bennett, 31 years old, with dirt blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, simply continued updating a patient chart. What Hollis couldn't know, what none of the 5 Army Rangers crowding the hallway could know, was that the quiet nurse they were about to humiliate had spent 3 tours in places they'd only heard about in classified briefings. The woman they dismissed as just another hospital employee had earned decorations that most special operators would kill for. And in less than 40 minutes, their entire world was about to collapse. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you to stick with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this one hits you the way I think it will, leave a like so I know to bring you more stories like this. The Thursday evening shift at Providence General Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina, had started like any other. Sarah Bennett arrived at 2:47 p.m., 3 minutes ahead of her 3 p.m. clock-in, carrying a thermos of coffee that would probably go cold before she touched it. The emergency department was already humming with activity. A broken wrist in Bay 3, possible appendicitis in Bay 7, and a geriatric patient with chest pains being prepped for transfer to cardiology. Sarah moved through the chaos with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of practice. She wasn't flashy, didn't need to be. While some nurses thrived on drama and recognition, Sarah had learned long ago that the best medical professionals were the ones nobody noticed until they absolutely needed them. "Sarah, can you take vitals on the appendicitis case?" Karen Mills, the charge nurse, called from across the station. "Rodriguez is swamped with the cardiac workup." "On it." Bay 7 held a 19-year-old college student named Marcus, who looked green around the gills. Sarah introduced herself, washed her hands at the sink, and began the assessment with practiced calm. Blood pressure, elevated but not critical. Temperature, 101.3. When she palpated his lower right quadrant, Marcus nearly came off the table. "Yeah, that's the spot," he groaned. "I know," Sarah said quietly. "Try to breathe through it. Dr. Morrison's going to want imaging, but I'm pretty sure we're looking at your appendix. Is it bad?" "It's fixable. That's what matters." She finished the assessment, updated his chart, and flagged it for Morrison's review. As she stepped back into the hallway, she noticed a commotion near the main entrance. 5 men in Army combat uniforms were walking through the automatic doors like they owned the place. Not the calm, professional demeanor of soldiers visiting a sick buddy. This was something else. Loud voices, aggressive postures, the kind of swagger that set Sarah's teeth on edge. "Yo, which way to the lounge?" one of them called out to no one in particular. Karen appeared from around the corner, her expression already tight with irritation. "Gentlemen, can I help you find someone?" The tallest of the group, a man with sergeant stripes and a face that suggested he'd never been told no in his life, stepped forward. "We're looking for the staff lounge. Got word it's on this floor." "The staff lounge is for hospital employees during their breaks," Karen said firmly. "Are you here to visit a patient?" "We're here because we were invited," the sergeant said. His name tape read, Hollis. "Major Brennan said we could use the space for a unit gathering. Some of our guys served with a doctor here. We're rotating out next week, and this is our send-off." Karen's expression softened slightly. "I see. Well, you'll need to check with administration about—" "Already did," Hollis interrupted. "They cleared it. So if you could just point us in the right direction, we'll get out of your hair." Sarah watched the exchange from near Bay 7, instinctively cataloging details. 5 men, all combat uniforms, all carrying themselves with the particular arrogance of soldiers who'd seen action and wanted everyone to know it. The sergeant was clearly the alpha. 2 of his companions flanked him like enforcers. The other 2 hung back slightly, one of them looking vaguely uncomfortable with the whole display. Karen sighed. "Down the hall, last door on the left. Please keep it down. We have patients trying to rest." "Yes, ma'am," Hollis said with exaggerated politeness that somehow felt more insulting than outright rudeness. The group moved past the nurse's station, their boots heavy on the floor. As they passed Sarah, Hollis's eyes flicked over her with dismissive disinterest. She might as well have been furniture. "Think they're going to be a problem?" Karen muttered once they were out of earshot. "Probably," Sarah replied, "but not our circus unless they make it our circus." "God, I hope they don't." The next hour passed in relative peace. Sarah treated a 7-year-old with a playground injury, consulted with Morrison about Marcus's imaging results, appendicitis confirmed, surgery scheduled, and helped admit an elderly woman with pneumonia. The Rangers in the lounge were loud but contained. Then, around 5:15 p.m., everything shifted. Sarah was restocking supplies in the medication room when she heard raised voices from the direction of the lounge. Male voices getting louder. She paused, listening. Hospital arguments were nothing new. Families under stress, patients in pain, occasionally someone with mental health issues or substance problems. But this sounded different. Are you kidding me right now? That was Hollis's voice echoing down the hallway. Sarah stepped out of the medroom and saw Karen heading toward the commotion. I should probably, Sarah started. Stay here, Karen said. I'll handle it. But Sarah followed anyway, hanging back near the corner where the main hallway intersected with the corridor leading to the lounge. She could see Karen's back, rigid with tension, and beyond her the cluster of rangers blocking the lounge doorway. Gentlemen, I need you to lower your voices, Karen was saying. We have patients. This is ridiculous, Hollis cut her off. We were told we could use this space, and now you're saying we can't? I'm saying that your gathering wasn't properly authorized through the right channels. Administration is concerned about what? A few soldiers wanting to have a quiet drink before deployment? Sarah's eyebrows rose. Alcohol in a hospital staff lounge? That definitely wasn't authorized. Karen's voice went ice cold. If you're bringing alcohol onto hospital property, this conversation is over. You need to leave. Now. Or what? One of Hollis's companions stepped forward, a stocky man with corporal stripes. You gonna call security? Have us thrown out like common criminals? If necessary. Sarah saw Karen reach for the phone on the wall. Hollis moved faster than she expected, putting himself between Karen and the phone without quite touching her. It was a power move, pure intimidation. Let's not escalate this, he said, his voice dropping to something that might have been reasonable if not for the threat underneath it. We're all adults here. We'll put away the beer, keep it down, and be out of your hair in an hour. Deal? No deal. You need to leave. Listen, lady. Sarah stepped around the corner. Is there a problem? All heads turned. Hollis's eyes fixed on her with the same dismissive glance he'd given earlier, but this time there was irritation in it. No problem, he said. Just a misunderstanding with your supervisor here. Doesn't sound like a misunderstanding, Sarah said calmly. Sounds like you're being asked to leave. Hollis's jaw tightened. And you are? Someone who works here, which means this is our space, not yours. The stocky corporal laughed. Oh, we got a tough one. What are you, the muscle? Sarah ignored him, keeping her eyes on Hollis. There are patients 20 feet from here who need rest and quiet. You're providing neither, so whatever you think you were authorized to do doesn't matter anymore. You're disrupting patient care, and you need to go. For a moment, Hollis looked like he might actually comply. Then his expression hardened into something ugly. You know what your problem is, sweetheart? You think because you wear scrubs in a nice, safe hospital, you understand sacrifice. You don't. You spend your days putting Band-Aids on paper cuts while people like us do the real work. Sarah felt Karen stiffen beside her. Sergeant, that's completely out of line. Is it? Hollis was warming to his theme now, and his companions were grinning like he was delivering a particularly good stand-up routine. Look, I'm sure you're great at changing bedpans and checking blood pressure, but don't lecture us about what we can and can't do. We've earned the right to blow off steam however we want. Not in a hospital, you haven't, Sarah said quietly. Oh, I'm sorry. Did your feelings get hurt? The corporal again, stepping closer. Maybe you should go find a safe space and have a good cry about it. The other rangers laughed. Even the two who'd seemed uncomfortable earlier were smirking now, caught up in the group dynamic. Sarah's expression didn't change. You done? Hollis leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Not even close. See, this is what's wrong with civilian medical. No respect for the people who keep them safe. You sit here in your climate-controlled hallways dealing with the occasional emergency that's probably just some hypochondriac with gas, and you think you understand stress. You think you understand pressure. I don't think anything, Sarah said. I know my job, and I do it. That's enough. Is it? Hollis pushed off the wall. Because from where I'm standing, your job is pretty damn easy. You want to know what real medical work looks like. Try treating a sucking chest wound in 120-degree heat with mortars landing 50 meters away. Try keeping someone alive when the nearest surgical facility is a 40-minute medevac flight, and you're not sure the bird can even land because of enemy fire. That's medicine. What you do? That's just customer service with a stethoscope. The hallway had gone quiet. Sarah was aware of other staff members gathering at a distance, watching. She could feel Karen's anger radiating like heat. You finished? Sarah asked again. Depends. You going to run to administration and complain about the mean soldiers? No. Good. Then we don't have a problem. Hollis turned back toward the lounge. Come on, boys, let's give the nice nurses their hallway back. Sarah didn't move. Actually, we do have a problem. Hollis stopped. Excuse me? You still need to leave the building. The temperature in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. Hollis turned slowly, and for the first time, Sarah saw real anger in his face. Say that again. You heard me. You were asked to leave. You refused and became verbally abusive to staff. That means security gets called and you get escorted out. Those are the rules. Rules, Hollis repeated. You want to talk about rules? How about the rule that says you show some basic respect to the people who serve their country? Or doesn't that make it into your precious hospital policy? Respect goes both ways, Sarah said. You lost yours about 5 minutes ago. The corporal stepped forward again, getting into Sarah's personal space. You know what I think? I think you're on some kind of power trip. Bet you love pushing people around when you've got your little name badge and your hospital authority backing you up. But strip all that away, and what are you? Just another civilian who doesn't know what real work looks like. Sarah met his eyes without blinking. Step back. Or what? Or I have you removed for assault. I'm not touching you, sweetheart. You're within 6 inches of me and using your physical presence to intimidate. That's assault. Step back. Now. For a second, the corporal looked like he might actually swing at her. Then Hollis put a hand on his shoulder. Easy, Martinez. She's not worth it. Martinez stepped back, but the hostility radiating off him was palpable. Hollis smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. You really want to do this? Call security? Make a scene? Have us thrown out like we're criminals? I want you to leave, Sarah said simply. How that happens is up to you. Right, because you're in charge here. In this situation? Yes. Hollis laughed. That's adorable. Tell you what, sweetheart, why don't you go back to whatever patient is waiting for their blanket warmed or their pillow fluffed and let the adults handle this. Karen here seems reasonable. I'm sure we can work something out. Karen had been quiet through most of the exchange, but now she stepped forward. There's nothing to work out. Sarah's right. You need to leave. Both of you? Hollis shook his head. Unbelievable. You know what the real tragedy is? There are good nurses out there, people who actually understand what service means. But then you get people like you two who think putting on scrubs makes them heroes, and it ruins it for everyone else. We never said we were heroes, Sarah replied. You're the only one in this hallway obsessed with that word. That hit a nerve. Hollis's face flushed. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll disrespect me more? Threaten me? Maybe get physical? Sarah's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath it now. You've been running on intimidation since you walked into this building. It doesn't work on me. Maybe it should. Is that a threat, Sergeant? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Hollis seemed to realize he'd crossed a line, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. It's a fact. You don't know who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to, Sarah said. A soldier who's forgotten that the uniform he's wearing stands for something better than this. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background noise of the hospital seemed to fade. Hollis stared at Sarah with an expression somewhere between rage and disbelief. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, that's rich. You're going to lecture me about service? About what the uniform means? He looked at his companions. You guys hearing this? Martinez grinned. Loud and clear, Sarge. Hollis turned back to Sarah. Let me explain something to you. I've done 4 tours, Afghanistan, Iraq, and places I can't name because they're still classified. I've been shot at, blown up, and left for dead. I've carried wounded men through enemy territory and made decisions that kept my entire unit alive. So when you stand there in your clean scrubs with your judgmental little attitude and tell me what my uniform stands for, you're way out of your depth. Are you finished? Sarah asked quietly. Not even close. You want to know what really pisses me off? People like you who've never put their lives on the line, never faced real danger, never had to make impossible choices. You're the ones who are always the loudest about what soldiers should and shouldn't do. You sit in your safe little world and pass judgment, and you have no idea what you're talking about. Sarah's expression didn't change. You done now? Hollis blinked. Did you even hear what I just said? Every word. Are you leaving, or do I need to make the call? The sheer audacity of her response seemed to short-circuit something in Hollis's brain. He stared at her like she'd just spoken in ancient Greek. You really don't get it, do you? He said slowly. You really think you have authority here? I have enough. No, you really don't. Hollis's voice dropped to something dangerous. See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away. You're going to let us finish our gathering, and you're going to keep your mouth shut about all of this. Because if you don't, I will make it my personal mission to ensure everyone in this hospital knows exactly what kind of person you are. Karen grabbed the phone. That's it. I'm calling security. Martinez moved toward her. Sarah stepped between them. Don't, she said simply. Martinez stopped, more out of surprise than obedience. You really think you can stop me? I think you're smarter than you're acting right now. Is that right? That's right. They stood there, locked in a silent standoff. The moment stretched. Then, from down the hallway, a voice cut through the tension. What the hell is going on here? Everyone turned. A man in a white coat was striding toward them, his expression thunderous. Dr. Morrison, the ER attending. Behind him, a security guard in a dark blue uniform followed at a quick pace. These gentlemen were just leaving, Sarah said calmly. Morrison looked from her to Hollis to Karen. Someone want to explain? Misunderstanding? Hollis said quickly, his demeanor shifting in an instant. We were told we could use the lounge, but apparently there was a miscommunication with administration. We'll clear out, no problem. You're damn right you will. Morrison turned to the security guard. Marco, please escort these men off the property. Yes, sir. Hollis's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Not necessary. We can find our own way out. I'm sure you can. Marco's going to make sure you do. The Rangers gathered their things from the lounge with exaggerated slowness, making it clear they were complying under protest rather than actual respect for the hospital's authority. As they filed past Sarah and Karen, Hollis paused. This isn't over, he said quietly. Sarah met his eyes. Yes, it is. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you. Hollis's expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty, but then his familiar arrogance reasserted itself. We'll see about that. He followed his unit down the hallway, Marco trailing behind them. Morrison waited until they'd turned the corner before letting out a long breath. Someone want to tell me what happened? Karen launched into a rapid explanation. Morrison listened, his frown deepening with every detail. When she finished, he shook his head. I'll file a report with administration. Those idiots won't be coming back. He looked at Sarah. You okay? Fine. You sure? That got pretty heated. I've had worse. Morrison studied her for a moment, clearly wanting to ask follow-up questions, but Sarah's expression made it clear the conversation was over. He nodded. All right, let's get back to work. We've got patients waiting. The hallway cleared quickly. Staff who'd been watching from a distance dispersed, conversations returning to normal volume. Karen squeezed Sarah's shoulder. Thanks for backing me up. You did fine on your own. Still, that Hollis guy was a real piece of work. Sarah didn't respond. She was already moving back toward the nurses' station, her mind shifting to the dozen tasks still waiting. The confrontation had taken maybe 15 minutes total. In the grand scheme of a 12-hour shift, it was barely a blip. But as she picked up the next patient chart, she felt something in her chest tighten. Not fear, not anger. Something older and colder, a feeling she'd worked very hard to leave behind. Recognition. She knew men like Hollis, had served with some of them, had watched others die beside her. The swagger, the arrogance, the absolute certainty that their experience trumped everyone else's. It was familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Sarah Bennett wasn't just some civilian nurse who'd spent her career in climate-controlled comfort. The woman they'd dismissed and threatened had earned her nursing degree while still enlisted, had worked battlefield triage in places that made their classified locations look like vacation resorts, and had seen enough death to fill a dozen lifetimes. But she'd never told anyone at Providence General about her service. Never mentioned the 3 tours, the commendations, the nightmares that still woke her at 3 a.m. She'd left that life behind deliberately, trading combat boots for sensible sneakers and the weight of a rifle for the weight of a stethoscope. Some doors were better left closed. Sarah spent the rest of her shift in focused silence, moving from patient to patient with mechanical efficiency. The appendicitis case went to surgery. The pneumonia patient was admitted to the ICU. A car accident victim came in around 8 p.m. with multiple fractures, keeping the entire team busy for 90 minutes straight. By the time Sarah's shift ended at 11 p.m., she was exhausted in the particular way that only emergency medicine could produce. Physically drained, mentally wrung out, emotionally numb. She changed in the locker room, stuffed her scrubs into her bag, and headed for the parking lot. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the promise of rain. Sarah's car, a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the rear bumper, sat under a flickering streetlight near the edge of the lot. She was 20 feet away when she noticed them. 3 figures leaning against a dark SUV parked directly beside her car. Even in the dim light, she recognized their silhouettes. Hollis, Martinez, and a third ranger she vaguely remembered from the earlier confrontation. Sarah's hand tightened on her bag strap. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, go back inside, find security. But she'd spent too many years walking into danger to let fear dictate her movements now. She kept walking. Hollis pushed off the SUV as she approached. Evening, Sarah, or should I say, Nurse Bennett. Bit late to be getting off work, isn't it? Sarah stopped 10 feet away, close enough to hear them clearly, far enough to run if necessary. You need to leave. See, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Hollis's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it worse. You embarrassed me in there, in front of my men, in front of hospital staff. That's not something I take lightly. You embarrassed yourself. I just didn't let you get away with it. Martinez laughed. Still got that smart mouth, huh? I'm asking you one more time. Leave. Or what? Hollis spread his hands. You'll call security? We're in a parking lot, sweetheart. Public property. We're not breaking any laws. Harassment is a law. Harassment? We're just having a conversation. The third ranger, younger than the others, shifted uncomfortably. Sarge, maybe we should just shut up, Patterson. Hollis never took his eyes off Sarah. Here's the thing. I did some checking after our little incident, asked around about you, and you know what I found? Sarah said nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. You're not from Asheville, no family in the area, no social media presence worth mentioning. You showed up at Providence General about 2 years ago with solid references and a clean background check, and that's it. It's almost like you materialized out of thin air. People are allowed to have private lives. Sure, but it made me curious. Because in my experience, when someone's that private, they're usually hiding something. Hollis took a step closer. So what are you hiding, Sarah Bennett? Nothing that concerns you. I think it does. See, I don't like mysteries. And I really don't like people who think they can disrespect me without consequences. Sarah's pulse was steady, her breathing controlled. She'd been in worse situations than this. Much worse. If you're trying to intimidate me, it's not working. No? Hollis smiled. Then you're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe I'm just tired and want to go home. In a minute. First, I think we need to establish some understanding. You made me look bad in front of my unit. That's a problem. But I'm willing to let it slide if you do something for me. Not interested. You haven't heard what I want yet. Don't need to. Hollis's smile faded. You're really going to make this difficult? I'm going to my car. You can stay here or leave. Your choice. She started walking. Martinez shifted to block her path. Sarah stopped. Move, she said quietly. Make me, Martinez grinned. The younger ranger, Patterson, spoke up again. Sarge, this isn't... I said, shut up. Sarah's mind was calculating options. 3 against 1. Martinez was the immediate threat, blocking her path. Hollis was the leader, the one calling shots. Patterson was uncertain, potentially an ally if things went sideways. Her car keys were in her jacket pocket, phone in her bag. Security office was across the parking lot, maybe a 100-yard sprint. She could scream. Probably should scream. But something in her refused to give them the satisfaction. Last chance, she said to Martinez. Move. Or what? You gonna fight me? I'd love to see that. No, you really wouldn't. Something in her tone made Martinez hesitate. Just for a second. Just long enough for Sarah to see the crack in his bravado. Then headlights swept across the parking lot. A vehicle was approaching, moving fast. All 4 of them turned. The car, a dark sedan with government plates, pulled into a spot 20 feet away. The engine cut off. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, and Sarah's entire world tilted. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of posture that only came from decades of military service. Gray hair cut military short, civilian clothes that somehow still looked like a uniform, and a face Sarah hadn't seen in 4 years. Colonel James Rutherford, her former commanding officer. The man who'd pinned her commendation medal to her chest and told her she'd done more for her country than anyone would ever know. He took one look at the scene, Sarah, the 3 rangers, the obvious tension, and his expression went from neutral to ice cold in half a second. Gentlemen, he said quietly. Step away from the nurse. Hollis straightened. Sir, this is a private conversation. I don't recall asking for an explanation, Sergeant. I gave you an order. Step away. The authority in his voice was absolute. Hollis and Martinez moved without thinking, their bodies responding to command before their brains caught up. Patterson looked relieved. Rutherford walked forward until he was standing beside Sarah. You all right, Captain Bennett? The parking lot went silent. Hollis's face drained of color. Martinez took another involuntary step backward. Patterson's mouth hung open like he'd forgotten how to close it. Sarah didn't react. Couldn't react. Her entire body had locked up the moment Rutherford used her old rank. I asked you a question, Captain, Rutherford said, his eyes still on the 3 rangers. Are you all right? She managed to nod. Yes, sir. Good. He shifted his attention fully to Hollis now, and the temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Sergeant Hollis, is it? I saw your little performance in the hospital earlier. Caught it on the security feed while I was visiting a colleague on the 4th floor. Quite the show. Hollis found his voice, though it came out rough. Sir, I didn't know. Didn't know what? That the nurse you were threatening used to outrank you? Rutherford's tone could have cut glass. That she served 3 tours in combat medical operations? That she has more confirmed saves under fire than your entire unit combined? Sir, I'm not finished. Rutherford took a step forward. Hollis took a step back. You stand there in your uniform, talking about sacrifice and service, and you don't even recognize it when it's standing right in front of you. Do you know what that tells me, Sergeant? Hollis said nothing. It tells me you're so wrapped up in your own ego that you've forgotten what that uniform actually represents. It tells me you've mistaken volume for authority and aggression for strength. Most importantly, it tells me you're exactly the kind of soldier who gets people killed. Martinez spoke up, his voice unsteady. Colonel, with respect, we were just at ease, Corporal. I don't recall asking for your input. Rutherford didn't even look at him. Captain Bennett, these men give you any trouble tonight besides blocking your path? Sarah's throat was dry. She hadn't been called captain in 4 years. The rank felt foreign now, like a coat that no longer fit. Nothing I couldn't handle. I'm sure, but that's not what I asked. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to downplay it, smooth it over, make it go away. That part had learned to be small and invisible, to not make waves. But another part, the part that had survived ambushes and mortar attacks and dying soldiers crying for their mothers, that part was tired of shrinking. They were waiting by my car when I got off shift, she said quietly. Sergeant Hollis indicated he wanted to discuss our earlier encounter. Discuss. Rutherford's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. That's an interesting word choice. Sergeant, would you like to elaborate on what you plan to discuss? Just clearing the air, sir, making sure there were no hard feelings. In a dark parking lot at 11 p.m., 3 against 1. Rutherford let that hang for a moment. You know what we call that where I come from, Sergeant? Hollis's jaw clenched. Sir. Cowardice. The word landed like a physical blow. You're a coward hiding behind your uniform and your rank, picking fights with people you think can't fight back. And when you discovered you were wrong, you decided to double down rather than admit you made a mistake. That's not, Hollis started, but Rutherford cut him off with a single raised hand. Here's what's going to happen. You three are going to get in your vehicle and leave. You will not return to Providence General for any reason. You will not contact or approach Captain Bennett again. You will not discuss this incident with anyone outside your chain of command. Are we clear? Yes, sir, Patterson said immediately. Martinez nodded. Clear, sir? Hollis took longer, his pride clearly warring with his sense of self-preservation. Finally, he managed, Crystal, sir. Outstanding. Dismissed. The three Rangers moved toward their SUV with varying degrees of speed. Patterson practically ran. Martinez walked quickly, eyes down. Hollis took his time, maintaining what dignity he could. But Sarah noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he opened the driver's door. The SUV's engine started. Headlights flared. Then they were pulling out of the parking lot, taillights disappearing into the night. Rutherford waited until they were completely gone before turning to Sarah. His expression softened, just slightly. Been a while, Captain. Sarah felt something crack in her chest. 4 years, and it's just Sarah now, sir. I'm not active duty anymore. Once a captain, always a captain. You know that. He studied her face. You look good. Tired, but good. What are you doing here? Had a meeting at Fort Jackson this afternoon. Thought I'd swing by Asheville on my way back to D.C., visit an old friend who's recovering from surgery upstairs. Imagine my surprise when I check in and see you on the security monitors, getting harassed by a bunch of kids who don't know their ass from their elbow. Despite everything, Sarah felt a small smile tug at her lips. They're not kids. Hollis has 4 tours. 4 tours doesn't mean anything if you haven't learned anything. Rutherford gestured toward her car. You heading home? That was the plan. Good. I'll follow you. Make sure those idiots don't circle back. That's not necessary. Sarah. His voice was gentle but firm. Let me do this. She wanted to argue. Wanted to insist she could handle herself, didn't need protection, was perfectly fine. But the truth was she was exhausted, rattled in a way she hadn't been in years, and the idea of driving home alone through dark streets suddenly felt overwhelming. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you, sir. They drove in convoy through Asheville's empty streets, Rutherford's sedan maintaining a steady distance behind her Honda. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to hurt. Her apartment was 20 minutes from the hospital, a small one-bedroom in a quiet complex that catered mostly to young professionals and retirees. She pulled into her assigned spot. Rutherford parked nearby. They met in front of her building, the overhead light casting harsh shadows. You want to come up? Sarah asked. I can make coffee. Rutherford checked his watch. It's almost midnight. I'm not sleeping anyway. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Coffee sounds good. Sarah's apartment was exactly what someone would expect from a single nurse working long shifts, clean but sparse, functional rather than decorated. A couch that came with the place. A small dining table with 2 chairs, bookshelves holding mostly medical texts and a handful of paperback thrillers. The only personal touches were a few photos on the mantel and a plant in the window that somehow hadn't died yet. Rutherford sat at the table while Sarah made coffee in her small kitchen. The familiar ritual helped settle her nerves slightly. Measure the grounds, fill the reservoir, press the button. Wait. You've done well for yourself, Rutherford said, looking around. Nice place. It's fine. Just fine? Sarah poured 2 cups, black for both of them. She brought them to the table and sat down across from him. It serves its purpose. Which is? Somewhere to sleep between shifts. Rutherford took a sip, his expression unreadable. You ever think about coming back? To active duty? No. Why not? You were one of the best combat medics I ever served with. Could write your own ticket. Instructor position at Fort Sam Houston, maybe. Or medical liaison to special operations. Hell, with your record, you could probably land a position at Walter Reed if you wanted. Sarah wrapped her hands around her mug, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. I left for a reason. Which was? I couldn't do it anymore. The medicine? The war. She met his eyes. I spent 3 years watching kids die. Putting them back together just so they could get blown apart again. Sending them home in pieces, literally and figuratively. I did my job, did it well, but something broke. I needed out. Rutherford nodded slowly. I get that. More than you know. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, not filling the space with unnecessary words. It was comfortable. The kind of quiet that only existed between people who'd been through hell together. Finally, Rutherford spoke. Those men tonight, they rattled you. I'm fine. Sarah, she sighed. They reminded me of people I used to know. Soldiers who thought their experience made them bulletproof. Who confused survival with superiority. She paused. I saw what happened to some of them. Watched them lead good people into bad situations because they couldn't admit they didn't have all the answers. Hollis struck you as that type? Hollis struck me as someone who's going to get someone killed if he doesn't pull his head out of his ass. Rutherford smiled grimly. Accurate assessment. I'll be making some calls tomorrow. His commanding officer is going to hear about tonight. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. His tone left no room for argument. He crossed a line, multiple lines. That kind of behavior doesn't get better on its own. It metastasizes. Sarah knew he was right, but part of her still resisted. She'd spent 4 years trying to put her military service behind her, trying to be just another nurse living a quiet civilian life. Having Rutherford show up, using her old rank, threatening to drag her back into that world, it felt like a door she'd sealed shut was being pried open. I don't want to make a big thing out of this, she said carefully. Too late. It already is a big thing. Rutherford leaned forward. Sarah, I need you to understand something. What happened tonight wasn't just some jackass being disrespectful. It was harassment, possibly assault, depending on how you want to classify the parking lot encounter. And it happened to a decorated veteran who earned her rank and her commendations the hard way. I don't advertise my service. I noticed. Why? Sarah took a long drink of coffee, buying time to organize her thoughts. Because people treat you differently when they know. Some put you on a pedestal. Others get defensive, like they need to prove they're just as tough. I didn't want any of it. I just wanted to be a nurse. And you are. A damn good one, from what I hear. You checked up on me. Of course I did. You were one of my people. Rutherford's expression softened. Your supervisor at Providence speaks very highly of you, says you're calm under pressure, excellent with critical patients, never complains. She mentioned you took on extra shifts during the COVID surge when half the staff was out sick. Sarah shrugged. Someone had to. See, that's what I'm talking about. You downplay everything. But the fact is, you saved lives during that pandemic, just like you saved lives in Afghanistan. The location changed. The uniform changed. The work didn't. It's not the same. Isn't it? Sarah stood abruptly, needing movement. She walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. A streetlight flickered, casting uneven shadows across the pavement. In Afghanistan, I had a team, she said quietly. People who understood the mission, who had the same training, who knew what they were signing up for. Here, I'm just another nurse in a system that's perpetually understaffed and underfunded. I can't save everyone. Half the time, I can't even get patients the care they need because insurance won't cover it. Or there aren't enough beds, or the specialists are booked out for months. That's not your fault. Doesn't matter. It still feels like failure. Rutherford joined her at the window. You know what I think? I think you're being too hard on yourself. You left combat medicine because it was destroying you, and that was the right call. But now you're working yourself to death in a different uniform, trying to prove something that doesn't need proving. I'm not trying to prove anything. No? Then why the extra shifts? Why the refusal to take vacation? Why are you still at the hospital at 11 p.m. when your shift ended at 3? Sarah turned to face him. My shift ended at 11. Your supervisor said you regularly stay late to help with patient transitions. Someone has to make sure the night shift has everything they need. And it has to be you? I'm good at it. You're good at a lot of things. That doesn't mean you have to do all of them. Rutherford's voice gentled. Sarah, I didn't drive 2 hours out of my way just to make sure some punk rangers left you alone. I came because I was worried about you. Sarah's throat tightened. Why? Because the last time I saw you, you were standing in my office at Fort Campbell, telling me you were done. And you looked like you'd aged 10 years and 3. You were burnt out, traumatized, and barely holding it together. I signed your discharge papers because you asked me to, but I've wondered ever since if I should have pushed harder for you to get help first. I did get help. I went to therapy, got my nursing license upgraded, found a job, built a life, a half-life, Rutherford said bluntly. You work, you sleep, You work some more. Where's the rest of it? The friends? The relationships? The things that make life worth living? I have friends. Name 3 who aren't coworkers. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't. Rutherford sighed. Look, I'm not trying to run your life. You're an adult, and you've earned the right to make your own choices. But as someone who cares about you, I'm asking you to think about what you're doing. You left the military to escape the grind, but you just found a different grind to throw yourself into. It's not the same. The burnout will be. They stood there in silence, the weight of his words hanging between them. Sarah wanted to argue, to defend her choices, to prove that she was fine. But exhaustion was catching up with her, and the adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation with Hollis was wearing off. I don't know how to do anything else, she admitted quietly. This is what I'm good at, taking care of people, fixing problems, keeping everyone else alive. What about keeping yourself alive? I'm here, aren't I? Physically, yes, but are you actually living or just going through the motions? Sarah didn't have an answer for that. Rutherford checked his watch again. It's late. I should let you get some sleep. You driving back to D.C. tonight? Got a hotel near the airport. Flight leaves at 7 a.m. He moved toward the door, then paused. Sarah, I meant what I said earlier. What happened tonight wasn't okay. I'm going to make sure there are consequences. I don't want special treatment. This isn't special treatment. This is basic accountability. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed her the screen. It was an email draft to someone named Major General Patricia Vance. I'm sending this first thing tomorrow. It details the incident at the hospital and the parking lot encounter. Hollis and his people are going to face a formal review. Sarah read the email, her stomach nodding. It was professional, factual, and damning. Every detail was there, the harassment, the threats, the intimidation. Reading it made the whole thing feel more real somehow. This is going to blow back on me, she said. Probably. Can you handle it? She thought about Hollis's face when Rutherford called her captain. Thought about Martinez and Patterson, the way they'd stepped back when given a direct order. Thought about all the soldiers she'd served with who'd respected her rank and her skill, who'd trusted her to keep them alive. Yeah, she said finally. I can handle it. Good. Rutherford pocketed his phone. One more thing. I'm putting in a recommendation that you receive a commendation for your civilian service. What you did during the COVID surge deserves recognition. Please don't. Too late. Already drafted it. He smiled slightly. You don't get to hide forever, Captain. People need to know what you've done, both in uniform and out of it. He left before she could argue further. Sarah locked the door behind him and stood in her quiet apartment, feeling more unsettled than she had in years. She didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events in her mind. Hollis's sneer, Martinez blocking her path, Patterson's discomfort, and Rutherford appearing like some kind of guardian angel, using her rank like a weapon. Captain Bennett. She hadn't heard those words in 4 years. Hadn't wanted to hear them. But there was something about the way Rutherford said it, with respect, with acknowledgement, with the weight of everything she'd accomplished, that made her chest ache. Around 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and made more coffee. Sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, staring at the blank screen. She'd been working on an email to her supervisor for weeks, trying to find the right words to request a reduction in hours. The draft sat in her inbox, perpetually unfinished. Dear Karen, I've been thinking about my schedule lately, and I believe it would be beneficial for me to cut back on the number of extra shifts I'm taking. While I value the opportunity to support the team, I think some work-life balance would help me be more effective during my regular hours. It was corporate speak, carefully neutral, revealing nothing. Sarah hated it. She deleted the whole thing and started over. Karen, I need to reduce my hours. I'm burning out, and if I keep going like this, I'm going to make a mistake that gets someone hurt. I'll still work my regular shifts, but I can't keep covering for everyone else. Better. More honest. Still not quite right. The cursor blinked at her, waiting. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Colonel Rutherford. Saved your number from the hospital directory. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. Old habits. Sarah smiled despite herself. Typed back, I'm fine. Can't sleep, but that's nothing new. His response came quickly. Insomnia or thinking too much? Both. Want some advice? Do I have a choice? Not really. Stop trying to carry everything by yourself. Delegate. Ask for help. Take a damn day off once in a while. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. Sarah stared at the message. Typed. I'll think about it. That's not the same as doing it. I know. Sarah, I know, sir. I hear you. Another pause, then. Good. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Why is tomorrow big? Because you're going to start making changes. Small ones, but changes. You're very presumptuous. I'm very right. Good night, Captain. Sarah set down her phone and looked at her laptop screen. The cursor still blinked in her unfinished email. She took a breath and started typing. Karen, I need to talk to you about my schedule. Not tomorrow. Things are going to be complicated tomorrow. But soon. I've been taking on too much, and it's catching up with me. I want to find a more sustainable balance. I'll explain more when we talk. Sarah. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The rest of the night passed slowly. Sarah tried reading, tried watching TV, finally just sat on her couch and stared at nothing. When dawn started filtering through her windows, she felt hollowed out, but strangely calm. Her shift didn't start until 3 p.m., which meant she had the entire day to herself. Normally, she'd spend it running errands, catching up on sleep, maybe picking up an extra shift if someone called out. Instead, she got dressed in running clothes and went for a jog. The morning air was crisp and clean. Her legs protested at first, unused to the exercise, but she pushed through the discomfort, found a rhythm, let her mind empty. She ran for 40 minutes, longer than she'd run in months. By the time she got back to her apartment, her lungs were burning and her legs felt like jelly, but something in her chest had loosened. She showered, made breakfast, and sat down with a book she'd been meaning to read for 6 months. Actually read it too, instead of just staring at the pages while her mind wandered to work. Around noon, her phone rang. Karen's name on the screen. Sarah answered. Hey. Hey yourself. Karen sounded tired but not upset. Got your email. You okay? Yeah. Just needed to be honest. I appreciate that. And for what it's worth, I've been worried about you. You work too much. I know. So let's figure out a better schedule. You free tomorrow morning? We can grab coffee, talk it through. I can do that. Good. And Sarah? Whatever happened last night with those Rangers, Morrison told me there was some kind of follow-up in the parking lot. You sure you're okay? Sarah hesitated. It got handled. By who? Someone I used to work with. He was visiting the hospital and saw what was happening. Thank God for small miracles. Those guys were assholes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you go. See you tomorrow? See you tomorrow. Sarah ended the call and sat back on her couch, staring at the ceiling. One small step, one conversation scheduled. It didn't feel like much, but Rutherford's words echoed in her head. Small changes. Small ones, but changes. She could do small changes. The rest of the day passed quietly. Sarah actually relaxed, let herself decompress. When it was time to get ready for work, she felt more centered than she had in weeks. The drive to Providence General was uneventful. She parked in her usual spot, grabbed her bag, and headed for the employee entrance. The security guard at the desk, Marcus, gave her a nod. Evening, Sarah. Evening, Marcus. Hey, heads up. There's been some brass in the building today. Military types. Admin was running around like crazy earlier. Sarah's stomach dropped. What kind of military types? Couple of officers in dress uniforms. They were in a meeting with hospital administration and the chief of staff for like 3 hours. Just left about 20 minutes ago. Did they say what it was about? Nah, above my pay grade. Marcus grinned. But the rumor mill says it had something to do with that incident yesterday, those Rangers who got kicked out. Sarah forced herself to stay calm. Interesting. Yeah, anyway, thought you should know, in case anyone comes asking questions. Thanks, Marcus. She made her way to the locker room, changed into her scrubs, and headed for the nurses' station. The ER was moderately busy. A few patients waiting, nothing critical. Karen was at the desk, reviewing charts. There you are, Karen said when she spotted Sarah. We need to talk. Sarah's pulse quickened. About? My office. 5 minutes. Karen walked away before Sarah could respond. A few of the other nurses gave Sarah curious looks, but no one said anything. Sarah spent those 5 minutes trying to control her breathing and failing. Whatever was coming, it was connected to last night. Had to be. Rutherford had made his calls, sent his emails, and now the consequences were landing. When she finally knocked on Karen's office door, her supervisor's voice was carefully neutral. Come in. Sarah stepped inside. Karen was sitting behind her desk, but she wasn't alone. Dr. Morrison was there, along with someone Sarah didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s wearing a dark pantsuit and an expression that gave nothing away. Sarah Bennett, the woman said. I'm Linda Reeves, Director of Hospital Administration. Please have a seat. Sarah sat, her mind racing through possibilities. Was she in trouble? Being fired? Had Hollis filed some kind of complaint? Reeves studied her for a long moment. I'll get straight to the point. We received a visit today from 2 military officers, a colonel and a major. They were here regarding an incident that occurred yesterday evening involving you and several Army Rangers. Sarah's mouth went dry. Yes, ma'am. They provided us with a detailed account of what transpired, both inside the hospital and in the parking lot afterward. They also provided us with information about your military service record, information that, frankly, none of us were aware of. Sarah said nothing. Captain Bennett, Reeves continued, using the rank deliberately. Why didn't you disclose your combat medical experience when you applied for this position? It didn't seem relevant. Reeves blinked. You have 3 tours in combat zones, multiple commendations, and field experience that most emergency room physicians would kill for. And you didn't think that was relevant? I put my nursing credentials on my application. Everything else was in my background check. Your background check showed honorable discharge and clean record. It didn't detail your specific service or rank. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I just didn't think it mattered for a civilian nursing position. Morrison spoke up. Sarah, no one's accusing you of anything, but you have to understand finding out one of our nurses is a decorated combat veteran who saved God knows how many lives under fire. That's not nothing. It was my job, same as this is my job. Reeves leaned forward. The military officers who visited us today made something very clear. What happened last night was completely unacceptable. They also made it clear that there will be consequences for the soldiers involved, consequences that are already being implemented. Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. I didn't ask for any of this. We know. But it happened anyway. Reeves pulled out a folder and opened it. I've been reviewing your performance evaluations. Your supervisor consistently rates you as excellent. Your patient outcomes are among the best in the department. You regularly volunteer for difficult cases and high-stress situations. And according to Dr. Morrison, you were instrumental during the worst days of the COVID crisis. I was just doing my job, Sarah said again, the words automatic. Yes, Reeves agreed. Which brings me to why we're having this conversation. Providence General is a good hospital, but we can always be better. And one of the ways we can improve is by recognizing and utilizing the exceptional talents of our staff. Sarah felt a cold sense of dread. What does that mean? It means we want to offer you a position as our new emergency department clinical educator. The words didn't make sense at first. Sarah stared at Reeves, then at Karen, then at Morrison. I'm sorry, what? Morrison smiled. It's a promotion, Sarah. You'd be responsible for training new ER nurses, developing protocols, and serving as a resource for complex cases. It comes with a pay increase, better benefits, and a more regular schedule. I don't want a promotion. The room went silent. Reeves recovered first. I'm sorry? I said I don't want a promotion. I like what I do. I'm good at direct patient care. I don't want to be an educator or an administrator. Karen spoke up gently. Sarah, this is a really good opportunity. Most nurses would jump at this. Then offer it to someone who wants it. We want to offer it to you, Reeves said firmly. Your military experience, your clinical skills, your performance record, you're exactly what this department needs. Sarah stood abruptly. With all due respect, ma'am, no. I didn't come here to be someone's poster child for veteran hiring or to have my military service turned into a PR opportunity. I came here to be a nurse. That's all I want to be. She walked out before anyone could stop her, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The hallway seemed to tilt and spin. She made it to the staff bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and leaned against the cold metal wall. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. The moment people found out about her service, everything changed. They saw her differently, treated her differently, wanted her to be something other than what she was. She stayed in the bathroom for 10 minutes, breathing slowly, trying to regain control. When she finally emerged, Karen was waiting outside. That could have gone better, Karen said quietly. I'm not taking the promotion. I heard. But Sarah, you need to understand, this isn't about your military service. Reeves has been trying to create that position for 2 years. She finally got budget approval last month. The timing is coincidental. Is it? Yes, although I'll admit, finding out you're basically a badass combat medic did make the decision easier. Karen smiled slightly. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because it doesn't matter. It matters to the people you've saved. Sarah looked away. I need to get to work. Your shift doesn't start for another hour. Then I'll prep exam rooms or restock supplies or something. I just need to work. Karen studied her face. You know running away from this isn't going to make it go away, right? I'm not running. No? Then what do you call walking out of a meeting where 3 senior staff members are trying to recognize your accomplishments? Sarah met her eyes. Self-preservation. Before Karen could respond, the ER doors burst open and chaos erupted. Paramedics were wheeling in 3 gurneys at once, their voices overlapping in urgent bursts. Sarah's brain switched modes instantly, professional training overriding everything else. She moved toward the incoming patients without thinking, Karen right behind her. Multiple vehicle collision on Interstate 40, the lead paramedic called out. Semi-jackknifed, 4 cars involved. These are the critical cases. The first gurney held a woman in her 30s, conscious but bleeding heavily from a head wound. The second was a teenage boy, unconscious, with obvious chest trauma. The third was an older man, alert but gasping, his breathing wet and labored. Morrison appeared from nowhere, already snapping orders. Bay 1 and 2 for the head injury and chest trauma. Bay 3 for respiratory distress. Sarah, you're on the chest trauma. Karen, take the head wound. Rodriguez, you've got the respiratory case. Sarah grabbed the gurney rail as they rushed the teenager toward Bay 2. His skin was pale, lips tinged blue. She could see the paradoxical chest movement even through his clothes, flail chest, multiple rib fractures, probable pneumothorax. "How long has he been unresponsive?" she asked the paramedic. "Lost consciousness about 4 minutes ago. Went into respiratory distress. We bagged him en route." They transferred him to the exam table. Sarah's hands moved automatically, checking pulse, pupils, assessing the extent of the chest damage. His breathing was severely compromised, the right side of his chest barely moving. "I need a chest tube tray," she called out, "and get respiratory up here now." A nurse Sarah didn't know well, Jennifer, maybe Jessica, appeared with the supplies. Morrison was already at the bedside, stethoscope out, listening to lung sounds. "Absent on the right side," he confirmed. "Tension pneumothorax. We need to decompress immediately." Sarah had the needle ready before he finished speaking. Morrison took it, found the landmark, second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, and inserted with quick precision. The hiss of escaping air was immediate. The boy's oxygen saturation started climbing. Still critical, still in danger, but buying them time. "Better," Morrison said. "Let's get that tube in before it collapses again." The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. Sarah had done this procedure dozens of times in combat zones, often with worse equipment and under fire. But her hand still shook slightly as she prepped the insertion site. This wasn't some faceless soldier halfway around the world. This was a kid, maybe 17, probably on his way home from school when the accident happened. The chest tube went in cleanly. They connected it to suction, secured it, confirmed placement with a portable X-ray. The boy's breathing eased. Still unconscious, still critical, but stable enough to transfer to ICU. Sarah was cleaning up when she heard shouting from Bay 1. She moved to the doorway and saw controlled panic. The woman with the head injury was seizing, her body rigid on the table. Karen and 2 other nurses were trying to hold her steady while Morrison pushed medication through an IV line. "Lorazepam's not touching it," Karen said tersely. "She's been seizing for 90 seconds. "Add phenytoin," Morrison ordered. "And someone page neurosurgery. We might be looking at a bleed." Sarah stepped back, letting the team work. This wasn't her patient, wasn't her Bay. But she couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop running through differential diagnoses in her head. Head trauma, seizures, not responding to first-line anticonvulsants. Could be epidural hematoma, subdural, maybe diffuse axonal injury. The seizure finally stopped after another minute. The woman went limp, breathing but deeply unconscious. Karen looked shaken but focused. Morrison pulled off his gloves. "She needs a CT now. And I want neurosurgery down here 5 minutes ago." The ER had shifted into that particular kind of organized chaos that only came with mass casualties. More patients from the accident were arriving, walking wounded, minor injuries, people in shock. The waiting room was filling up with family members demanding information. Sarah worked on autopilot, moving from patient to patient, sutured a laceration, splinted a fractured wrist, talked down a panicking mother whose daughter had been in one of the cars but walked away with nothing worse than bruises. 3 hours into it, she realized she hadn't thought about the promotion or the meeting or Hollis once. This was what she was good at. This was what made sense. Around 7 p.m., during a brief lull, Morrison found her charting at the nurse's station. "Hell of a way to start a shift," he said. "Could be worse. Could be better." He sat down heavily in the chair next to her. "That kid with the chest trauma? He's stable. ICU thinks he'll make it." "Good." "The woman with the head injury isn't as lucky. Massive subdural hematoma. She's in surgery now, but neurosurgery isn't optimistic." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. It was always like this. You saved some, you lost some. The randomness of it never got easier. "You did good work today," Morrison continued. "Quick thinking on that chest decompression bought us the time we needed. It's basic trauma protocol." "Yeah, but you executed it perfectly under pressure." He paused. "I heard about the promotion offer. Heard you turned it down." "Word travels fast. This is a hospital. Gossip is our primary currency." Morrison smiled slightly. "For what it's worth, I think Reeves made the right call offering it to you. But I also understand why you said no." Sarah looked at him. "Do you?" "Some people are meant to be at the bedside. It's where they do their best work, where they make the biggest difference. Nothing wrong with knowing that about yourself." Administration doesn't seem to agree. Administration lives in spreadsheets and budget projections. They don't understand that sometimes the best use of talent is leaving it exactly where it is. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, saw Rutherford's name. "Need to talk. Call when you have a minute." Sarah excused herself and stepped into an empty exam room, closing the door behind her. She dialed. Rutherford picked up on the first ring. "Sarah, how's your day been?" "Complicated. Yours?" About the same. Listen, I need to give you a heads up. The formal complaint I filed is moving faster than I expected. Hollis and his unit are being recalled to Fort Bragg for disciplinary review. It's happening tomorrow. Sarah's stomach dropped. That fast? When a colonel files a direct complaint about harassment of a decorated veteran, the Army takes it seriously. He paused. There's going to be an investigation. They'll probably want to interview you. I don't want to be involved in this. You already are. And Sarah, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about what happened to you. Hollis has a history. This was the final straw, but there have been other complaints. Less severe, but a pattern. So use those. Leave me out of it. I can't. Your incident is the most clear-cut case of misconduct. The parking lot encounter especially, that crosses major lines. Sarah leaned against the exam table, suddenly exhausted. When? Probably within the week. A lieutenant colonel named Stevens will be heading up the investigation. I'll give you his contact information. Fine. Sarah. Rutherford's voice softened. I know this isn't what you want, but sometimes doing the right thing means accepting recognition you didn't ask for. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you think. They ended the call. Sarah stood in the empty exam room, staring at the generic motivational poster on the wall. Some quote about perseverance and strength. It felt hollow. When she returned to the nurse's station, Karen was waiting with a patient chart. Bay 5 needs a wound check. Guy came in 3 days ago with a laceration repair. Now he's back with signs of infection. I'll take it. Bay 5 held a man in his 50s, his left forearm wrapped in grimy bandages. The smell hit Sarah before she even fully entered the space. That particular sour, sweet odor that meant tissue breakdown. Mr. Harrison, she said, reading his name from the chart. I'm Sarah. Let's take a look at that arm. He didn't meet her eyes. It's fine. Just wanted to make sure. When did you last change the dressing? A couple days ago. And the antibiotics Dr. Morrison prescribed? Have you been taking them? Silence. That was answer enough. Sarah sat down on the rolling stool and began carefully unwrapping the bandage. The wound underneath was angry red, inflamed, with purulent discharge. Cellulitis, possibly early abscess formation. This isn't fine, she said quietly. This is infected. Badly. Can't afford the antibiotics, Harrison muttered. Insurance denied the prescription, said it wasn't medically necessary. Sarah felt anger flare hot in her chest. Not at Harrison, at the system that put him in this position. How much were they charging? $300 for a 10-day supply. For basic antibiotics? Name brand only. Generic wasn't on their approved list. Sarah stood and walked to the supply cabinet, found what she was looking for, sample packs of antibiotics that pharmaceutical reps left for exactly this situation. She pulled out 2 boxes. Take these. 1 tablet twice a day with food. All of them, even after it starts looking better. Harrison stared at the boxes like she'd just handed him gold bars. I can't pay for... You're not paying. These are samples. Free. I don't... Thank you. Sarah cleaned and redressed the wound, showed him how to do it properly at home, gave him strict instructions about signs of worsening infection. When he left, he actually shook her hand. She was washing up when Morrison appeared. Heard you raided the sample closet. He couldn't afford his prescription. I know, I saw his chart. Morrison leaned against the doorframe. You do that a lot, don't you? Find ways around the system to get patients what they need. Someone has to. Most people don't. Most people follow the rules, document that the patient refused treatment or couldn't afford medication, and move on. Sarah dried her hands. I'm not most people. No, you're really not. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Sarah, can I ask you something? Off the record? Depends on the question. Why medicine? With your military